traffic and stuff like that. And so he's, we're spending hours, maybe an hour every day almost. And so I make it to his first football game, and what do you think happens? He hikes the ball. That's literally it. He hikes the ball. So he gets to hike the ball each play. He doesn't get to run. He doesn't get to pass. He doesn't get to throw or catch. So I'm watching my kid hike the ball all game. Because the coaches of this third grade football team have decided that future NFL Hall of Famer number 1 is going to throw the ball, and future NFL Hall of Famer number 2 is going to run or catch the ball, right? So what position do you think my kid played his second year of football?
Probably still at center.
Probably still at center? No, my kid did not play football. It wasn't fun for him, right? He decided he wanted, I would have nudged him like, you sure? But he made that decision on his own. It wasn't fun for him, so he didn't play. I think that's one way we can see that in our everyday lives, in our society, how winning kind of, if we fixate on winning, how that's a detriment to what we're trying to do. I think we see that all over the place. When winning becomes the thing, we can look at politics, well, we'll say anything, do anything to win. So obviously, winning is bad. All right, before I go too much further, I should say we win. We actually win a lot. So as Vaughn said, we've taken state 3 years in a row. We also have a handful of individual state titles. My first year, Dallin Dalton took state in LD. Next year we had Logan Marshall and Tyra Ayer take state in PF. Logan also took state in impromptu. Ashton Bowles took state in oratory. Andrew Erickson took state in Congress. Then we had the COVID year. The next year we had Lindy Williams take state in Congress. Kylie Davis took state in impromptu and SPAR. And then just last year we had Kylie repeat as impromptu, Lindy repeat as Congress, and then Alyssa Durbridge took state in Interps. Did I miss anyone?
I think you got it.
Okay.
What school are you guys at?
Beaver High School.
This is 2A.
Yeah. And then we also take like a small platoon every year at a nationals, so they compete at the national tournament or the qualifying tournament. So we have a handful of kids who compete there, qualify for nationals, and then go on to compete at the national tournament. All right. So yeah, we win, and for as much as I think winning might be bad, I love to win. I'm very competitive. We have a ping pong table at our school that's out during lunch, and I don't care if you're in 7th grade, I'm smashing left and right. Last year at a cross country team night, spiked a girl in the face, she died 3 days. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it was an accident, but it gets intense, right? All right. But I do want to talk a little bit about the difference between winning and success, right? So before we ever got a taste of winning any sort of title, second or first place, the decision was going to be how we're going to measure the success, and it's not going to be winning, right? If you think in terms of if your measure of success ends with your final year of high school, right? If that's the measure of success, think about where you were in your last year of high school, right? So for me, I think obviously success is different for everyone, right? I had the luxury of stepping into a debate program where, again, I'm going to talk a lot about Vaughn. Probably going to turn the time over to Vaughn in about 5-10 minutes. But he's been the stabilizing force for, I think, 15 years. He's been through head coach after head coach after head coach. And so since I've been there, the numbers have been good. The kids have been solid, and it's been a really stable, good program, good support. We've been about 20 to 30 kids since I've been there, minus the COVID year, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But which I think is pretty good for a 2A school. So a lot of support. We even had like an 8th grade debate team, which our debate class that kind of fed into our debate program. So it's not like I came in and I'm some wizard and I made everything happen, right? But for some maybe it's getting enough kids to compete at state, or for some it's maybe getting enough kids to, or getting enough kids to have a full slate at state. Maybe it's, maybe you're looking for a state tournament or whatever it is. And those are all good things, but I think like for us, I think the success, we can kind of look at it a couple different ways. One, when the kids are with us in school, like we look at environment in terms of like what kind of environment our debate team has. Then also another thing that I look at is, what becomes of these kids when they leave our program 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road. If we have kids who take a state title and then, 2 years later they're, selling drugs to high school kids, I wouldn't call that a success, right? If these kids go on to, whether it's serve missions, serve in the armed forces, have families, I think if kids come back and help judge debate tournaments, I think that's a great sign that they're willing to come back and that they're willing to support their community and some of the other kids. I think that's great. So I don't know if I said this yet, but I'll say this. This is something that I said at our so last year we took state. We got off the fire truck and went into the auditorium and were met by a small crowd of parents, community members. And if you're the debate coach, everyone expects you to give speeches all the time, right? I don't like to give speeches. I don't like to talk in front of people. But that's what they expect, so you got to give the people what they want. And I'm up there and I kind of made the comment that I don't think I'm a good debate coach, right? I didn't do any of this stuff when I was in high school. Like Vaughn said, they gave me the job and said, you're doing debate, and I said, cool, what is that? So as far as if you're in here looking for me to give you the secrets to like finding the right framework and the right value criterion, I apologize, but I'm not really gonna be able to do that, right? I will talk a little bit about what we do to prepare our kids, but I think the thing that I am good at is kind of making sure that we have a team, right? If you're in 2A or lower, that's very important because every year you get maybe 3 teams with a full slate at region. And if you have a full slate, then you're gonna be top 1, 2, or 3 every year, right? I'm gonna divert just a little bit, talk a little bit about cross country, and then I'm gonna get back to debate. So at my school, don't ask me why, but I coached cross country, and then I coached debate, and then I coached track. So I started as a cross country coach, and my first year there, the year before they had 6 kids. My first day of practice, we had 2 kids. And my goal was, by the end of the year, let's have a full team, which would be 7 boys and 7 girls. We got that for our first meet. By the end of the year, we were maybe 20, 24, right? But that takes work to do that, right? And so I'm trying to come up with ways, how can I get kids, how can I make this something that people like to do, because running sucks and no one wants to run, right? And so we start doing Saturday breakfasts, right? We'll do long runs and then Saturday breakfast, and then we'll do Donut Friday, right? We do team nights before each meet, right? So I mentioned the COVID year, so back to debate. The COVID year, was anyone here for the COVID year? Anyone experience that? Okay, so we're geared up. I think we were fresh off of going to Berkeley, right? We went to an out-of-state tournament, went to Berkeley, had some kids who had some success there. Kids were primed, ready to go. They started that Monday, started talking, this thing got canceled and this thing got canceled. I'm like, I know what's happening. And they're like, no, it's not, it's still on. I know what's happening. Finally, the day before we're supposed to go to the meet, they say, guess what, it's canceled, right? So we have all these kids who worked really, really hard all year, who are excited to go compete at state, and then that gets ripped out from under them, right? And so we can't go. So the next year, I start, normally we're 20 to 30 kids, something like that. I start the year with no seniors. No, I take that back. I have 1 senior. The 1 senior that I could have done without, he shows up. And then we have like 4 other kids. And so we're gonna go to our first tournament of the year at Dixie, and I have a girl who's one of the 5 who's trying to bail on me, and I just take her aside and say, listen, I need you to go to this tournament because I need people to see that you're going to this tournament so that we can maybe get more kids to go to this tournament, right? And so they go have fun. The senior stole a pumpkin, I think. They had a lot of fun, came back, and we still kind of struggled with numbers. So I'm laying in bed at night thinking, man, what do I need to do here, right? So meanwhile, I got cross country going like this and debate going like this. And so I'm thinking like, okay, how can I make debate more like cross country? And then it dawns on me, we got to do the breakfast thing, right? And so we start thinking, I'm like, all right, if we're the weird kids at the school anyways, we're gonna go all in. And so on Saturdays, we're gonna start playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we're gonna eat breakfast at Bond's house, right? And so somehow that works, right? So our numbers start climbing. We get kids who don't want anything to do with debate. They want to come play D&D. So they came for the D&D and stayed for the debate. We had one of those kids actually finished top 5 at state in both spar and impromptu. And he showed up because he wanted to throw some dice on a Saturday morning, right? So now, is giving up your Saturdays great? No. Putting in extra time, that kind of stuff. I mean, we're all busy, right? But I think like whether it's that or something else or something you guys decide, I think if your kids see that this matters to you, you're gonna get them, right? And I think that lasts much, like far beyond debate, right? So I'll share an example. I don't know if I'm gonna cry or not, we'll see. So I have a couple of kids that I coached. My first year I had a couple of girls who were a PF team. They weren't that great at it, but they were the 3rd best team that we could put together for state, and so they competed at state. Shortly after, these freshman girls got busted for smoking pot by the school resource officer. In my first year, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I feel like I got to punish them in some way, right? So they got suspended from the team, and I got two very different results from both girls. One girl, now these girls were kind of similar in a lot of ways, come from really rough places, and these are the kind of girls that, you know, as debate coaches you'll probably see, I would imagine. But these girls are like girls who are destined to fail or set up to fail. You know, I think one of the girls, she was being raised by her grandparents, didn't have any parents around. I think there had been some abuse. The other girl, her mom, I think committed suicide maybe 4 years before she entered our program, so she was dealing with all of that. Just a dad at home, there's drugs, there's, you know, all this stuff. And so, you know, one decides to puff out her chest and say, so what? And then that girl, I didn't see her after 9th grade year, right? And then the other one, it was a little more repentant and says, like, I know I screwed up, I'm gonna fix this, and it was awesome to see the change in her. You know, year by year, she's playing soccer, she's, you know, ends up being the class president as a senior. I think she was the English Sterling Scholar as a senior. But also there was those things in between where in the summer I would get texts and phone calls from this girl because she was struggling and she was worried about what she was gonna do and that kind of stuff. And this is my first year as a debate coach. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So luckily my vice principal lives next door. I text him like, hey, this girl wants to. So again, we get great communities, great support from, you know, people in our community. So me, the principal, and the vice principal hop in a truck and we put her on speakerphone and kind of talk her through this kind of stuff. Had another experience just yesterday, or just Monday. A kid that we coached, he got caught smoking weed too. He and a buddy came to practice high one day, and I said, like, you guys, like, you're really gonna come to, you know, I know what that is. I know what you look like, right? And then, you know, so he brought that up the other day. He's now been graduated a couple years. His dad just passed away. Again, he told me like some of the things he's been dealing with. He said that he tried to hurt himself, but he kind of made these comments that he's like, he thought he could talk to me about those things, right? So when I talk about success, I think about these kids who know that we're for real, that we care about them, right? Because if we're all here because we really, really want to know how to win a PF round, I mean, I don't know, that's sad, I guess, right? Like, we're not here for that reason, right? All right. Okay, so I think that's kind of our success, is how, if we know that our kids feel like they're a part of something, that they're valued, that we trust them, that they can talk to us and that kind of stuff, I think then we're doing a good job. Also, we get to see their successes, right? I got a couple kids. So one kid, a little Hispanic kid, his first year, I think he had an HI script that he kept carrying around with him wherever he'd go. And that's the only thing he wanted to do, and he was terrible at it, right? The voices were terrible, the timing was off, it was horrendous. That's about all I remember because I think I suppressed that memory. But guess what? He stuck around in senior year, he's still no good at debate. But, but he got to a point where instead of being the shy kid, like he's able to talk and laugh and joke in front of his peers in the classroom, in the hallways. And so like to watch kids that way, I think that's what this is all about. Another kid, he's a senior this year. When he was in 9th grade, he was, maybe this big, talked this high, just didn't have the really, he's not gonna go into a round and he's got a lot of things working against him. Struggled his first year. Maybe I think we celebrated like a seventh place finish his sophomore year. Has worked himself into one of the strongest LD kids we have, or maybe have ever had. If I remember correct, I think he qualified for nationals last year in LD. So to see these kids kind of, and again, I don't have to be that great of a coach. I just have to offer a space for them, and then they kind of figure it out, right? And they help each other, and so I guess my job's really not that hard. I don't have to be that good of a debate coach. I just have to be a guy who has a door that's open that they can come into. All right. Okay, so obviously, in order for them to get to the success stuff, right? If we've got kids who come into our debate programs and they just get absolutely destroyed, it's not going to be. It's like my kid in the football thing, right? If it's not fun, they're gonna leave, right? And so debate, I feel like half of it's the debate stuff and half of it's the stuff that we do, whether it's team nights or D&D or whatever get-togethers. But if half of that really, really is rough for them, they're not going to keep coming back. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we do for PF, LD, kind of the debate stuff. All right. So in order, I guess one more thing before I get to that. Again, this idea of success. One of the models that I had, one of my first tournaments, my first year coaching, we went to Dixie High School. And I just saw this PF team that was just absolutely incredible, right? They were just like razor sharp. They were just destroying every single team that they went against. And the kicker, they were like the nicest team ever. Like, gee golly, gosh darn, just super nice kids, right? And so for me, it's like this is a team that is impossible to hate. Like, they can destroy you and you're gonna be like, you know what, you deserve that. I'm happy for you, right? But if you have teams go in and like, try to twist your words or put words in your mouth or trying to trick the judge and you lose to a team like that, you're going to be pretty upset. But if you get beat by a team like, well, they're more respectful than us, they were well organized, they were well prepared, like, man, they deserve it, right? And so are our kids always that way? No, but that's the goal, right? All right. Okay, so in order to prepare our kids, so the first thing we do with any of these debate events, right? Public Forum and Lincoln Douglas, we get a resolution that we work on for a month or 2 months. And the first thing I think we do is we sit down and say, okay, do you know what these words mean, right? We go through all these words. We have them define them, right? I think a big thing is make sure they know how to pronounce them. Because if you're a judge and around and then someone mispronounces a word, you know that they don't know what they're talking about, right? I try to have them before they get into doing the research stuff. I say, like, I want you to use your own brain, right? So you come up and brainstorm some ideas of possible contentions that we could have here, right? Or which route we want to go here, right? So that's step one. And also, like, let's try to think a step ahead. Like if we're going against someone, what might other people think, right? Or how can these, sometimes we get a resolution where it's clear that this is what this means, right? Sometimes we get a resolution like, well, no, you could say, right? And especially when you're dealing with debate kids, they love to do that. They love to be like, well, it could mean this, right? And so not just defining the words and knowing how to pronounce them, but like, how can these words be interpreted, right? All right, so step one is that. Step two, is, yeah, try to come up with 3 main points, right? And it would probably be good if those 3 main points are not the 3 main points at the end of their like final case, right? Because if the first 3 points that you think about, there's a great chance that everyone's going to think of those 3 points, right? So start with those, and then we start to do a little bit of research and make sure those points, that we can use those points, right? So yeah, back up those points. Stats, facts, examples. I think a thing that is important for our debate kids to remember is no one is looking for like the smartest kid in the room, right? That they're directing all these arguments to a judge, which is probably going to look a lot like us, right? I didn't do debate in high school, so when I sit down, I'm an inexperienced judge, right? I mean, at this point, I've been doing this for 5 years now. I got a little bit of a hang, you know, but a lot of times it's someone's aunt, someone's sister, someone who just graduated high school. Their goal is to provide an argument that this person can follow, right? So we don't want to overwhelm them with stats and numbers. Like, there has to be some kind of human connection and human quality to the conversation that we're having, right? So yeah, they need to be able to walk. You got to remember that they're not directing their argument to their PF partner who's like really into the same, you know, vocabulary that they got and all that stuff, but they're talking to someone. They got to walk them through it, take them by the hand, and walk them through this argument, right? Okay, step 4. I don't know if you're keeping track. I don't know if this is really 4 or not. Okay, but then another thing that, like, when you have those 3 main points, right? We all know that if you're doing PF or LD or even Congress, you've got an AF side and an neg side. So when you come up with those 3 great points, see if you can take down those 3 points, right? So go against your own points and see where they're weak, where they're strong. Sometimes we'll have our kids, like our PF teams, just kind of spar each other on the topic, right? I think that helps for them to see, okay, I'm short here, I need more information here, or okay, that was not so easily defended, I need to work on that.
Wait, will you explain what you mean by that? Like a spar, informal spar? Or
Yeah, so just like an informal spar round. So like, let's say, you know, they both know the topic and they probably both know the points that they have for AF and neg because they're on the same PF team, and we'll just split them up in a spar round, say, okay, here's the topic, and then spar. And
like
so
times and everything?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just for structure and predictability.
Yeah. So just they're just kind of focusing on some of those arguments, and then especially when you get into cross, like you're.
And then I understand you're right. It's one-on-one. It's teammates that usually are together on a PF team going one-on-one against each other.
Yeah.
That's a good activity.
Yeah. So we'll split them up sometimes and just have them spar. Or if we have, you know, multiple kids doing, like, you know, if we have multiple PF teams, we might throw them against each other or whatever. But just kind of a little exercise to kind of work through, you know, thinking more and figuring out how to defend more and figuring out how to attack more. So, okay, and then I think once you do that, it's important to like take the feedback you get. If you get your butt kicked in a spar round by your partner, take that feedback and figure out, what do I need to fix? How do I fix that? Yeah, so just kind of fill in the holes, fill in the gaps. Okay, so all this stuff is taking place before we even go to a tournament, right? Okay, next step I think would be to use those cases in rounds, or, you know, practice or in rounds, and then try to revise that so you got a good strong case ready to go for your tournament, right? And again, these topics we get last longer than one tournament, last longer than 1 month usually, so you're gonna have plenty of time to go again. And so, like, if my kid goes in an LD round or a PF round and they get slaughtered, like, I hope you were paying attention, because now you get to absorb some of that stuff and figure out how you can use that, right? Or whether it's case stuff or whether it's questions, right? Did anyone ask you a good question? Well, they asked me this and I wasn't able to answer it. Gee, write that down, right? Okay? Because I mean, like, a lot of these cases, we're all saying the same thing. We're just taking turns saying the same thing. Okay? And then just kind of, you know, rinse and repeat, just keep revising and making it stronger, right? So that's kind of our pre-competition stuff that we do. I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out. But yeah.
What about, do you guys, in terms of preparing for tournament, before you move on, do you buy briefs for your students? And which ones do you like?
Okay. So like as a new debate coach, my first year, they're talking about that. I didn't know anything about briefs, and like then I find out like it's these secret stuff. Like, oh, we have a case, right? We don't have to do anything. We have a case, and so we kind of outlawed that. Now they probably still bought them. And if you want to spend, I don't know, $40 or whatever on the briefs, then go ahead. Now I don't have a problem with our kids using the briefs, right? But I think that the kids should use the briefs only kind of to see like, okay, this is what people are going to be talking about. That make sense?
So you make them create cases before they access
Yes.
briefs?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I do the same thing with my students. I make them do a Google, like use Google Scholar and key it online. If you are an SBA member, you have membership access to that. And then when I'm like fairly confident that they have a decent idea of what they're going to say and how they're going to say it, then I will email them the briefs and I say, okay, here's some additional research that you may have missed, or this is what everyone else is going to be talking about. You need to prepare blocks for like these sorts of arguments that you're not going to think about. So kind of like supplementary, but I make them do the Google research themselves first.
Right.
I guess the point is that if a student's just handed the brief without doing research and really understanding the
They
resolution.
don't learn it, yeah.
And as judges, we get so tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over
Right.
and over.
So the brief is useful to know what everybody else is going to be arguing.
Yeah, so I would be totally fine if our kids just didn't use the briefs, right? But I think that kids think that, oh, now that's less work I have to do, right? Yeah. But really, another thing when you're doing, like when you're starting your research for this, like you can literally just Google the topic word for word, and there are so many resources out there, right? Now again, if it's that easy, do I think that every other school is gonna find the same stuff? Yes, right? The goal is to go above and beyond. So, I mean, I don't really go out of my way to like do research for them, but if I'm on Twitter or something or Facebook and I see like a podcast that mentions this thing, I'd be like, oh, hey, you may want to check this out. Or, you know, maybe oratory, I'll see like, oh, hey, here's a quote I heard, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of pass stuff like that along to them. And again, the goal is like, so we use briefs as a way to win if our goal is only to win, right? But our goal is to teach these kids like to put work in, like, you know, to be creative, to you know, be prepared and do work so that when they leave here, you know, I was gonna say this earlier, but like, if you wanna recruit kids to your program, like a lot of times you have to deal with parents, right? So I'll share this, I don't know if I should share this, maybe we should push pause there, but I had one kid, so we're trying to get a kid to join debate, and their parents said that they couldn't join debate because years ago, before my time, I don't know if you were there or not, we'll say before Bond's time,
Take the fifth.
some kid was like trying to summon the devil or something in the hotel room or something like that, right? So now I got a kid who can't do this because they heard that this thing happened, right? I want the opposite effect where I can, you know, like, you know, talk to these parents, be like, oh yeah, this guy right here who's serving in the military, or you know, he come on, he's a professor, or he's doing this, or he's just a good solid dude, like, oh yeah, these are our debate kids, and use that to say, you know, because we think debate is good, we think it's helpful, and we think it's useful for all these kids, right?
So just to be clear, did you stop the devil worship when you became?
I think we have a no devil policy.
I didn't think you'd go the route of the devil. I thought it was gonna be years ago a teacher was teaching critical race theory.
No, not that. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, I mean, good question on the briefs, and I mean, and it's up for anyone's, you know. But yeah, I want our kids to be smart, creative, and if we're all going to the same place, we're all gonna have the same cases, and then it's just like, well, who seems more confident, you know? Anyway. All right, so then we talk about things to consider and around. I've talked a little bit about this, but like, you know, just speaking ability, obviously. I don't know that we do a ton of training on that. I think just practice helps with that. You know, have them read their case slowly out loud so they're making sense, so they can hear themselves making sense. Also, if they can't pronounce words, then again, they need to know. I think if I'm a judge, and I'll share this example because I have an hour, but my first tournament was Beehive Bonanza. Anyone ever been to Beehive Bonanza? So that was my first tournament ever as a debate coach. And so of course I got lost on the way to my first round. I finally find it, I sit down, I'm judging a PF round, and these guys are like, what's your paradigm? I'm just like,
Yeah, I remember.
I'm probably like, no.
Same.
Yeah, and then I think they're like, no, dummy, and I'm just like, oh, just do debate stuff. And then they start, and I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong place, I shouldn't be here, I have no idea what's going on. And I guess I was gonna talk about this later, but I just get desperate, right? And so if anyone's been in that position, like, I know that I have to pick a winner at the end of the round, and so I'm just desperate for anything at all, and so it's just like, well, that kid has a nice haircut. She has a nice voice. Like, oh, that guy's tie is a little crooked, right? And like your hope, okay, well maybe this guy, maybe they've used more sources, right, or vocabulary. But I think again, like kids need to understand, like just every little detail matters, right? Because again, we're not professional judges, and it's just we're human, and we don't, you know, kids start talking about these resolutions that I don't know anything going on, and like, I don't know, anywhere. But so, okay. So yeah, little details. Yeah, I think that's what I just, oh, the other thing, this is kind of a side, but this is just a debate thing. I make sure my kids understand that as soon as they step off the bus, that's when their round starts, right? Even if we go to the hotel first, because you could be sharing a hotel with another team who has your judge there, right? And if you're bragging about how you did this with this girl, like, we're human and we're gonna try to be objective, but I'm not gonna forget hearing that stuff, right? A couple of years ago, we went to a tournament and I have my door open, I'm waiting for my kids to come in, and these two kids are sitting around the corner and they're just talking all sorts of stuff, and I'm just like, wow, like my kids can't do that. So then I gotta judge these kids, and it's just like, you're starting at like minus 25 right now.
Mhm.
So I think that's important for them to remember. Okay. All right, we'll talk a little bit about questioning, like questioning periods. Again, like when you go to these debate tournaments and you realize everyone's saying the same stuff, you should be able to come up with questions or be prepared with questions, right? So you want to make sure your kids are asking questions. My least favorite question is, can you restate your contention 1, right? Kids get nervous and they don't have a question, and so they feel like they have to ask a question, but what are they doing when they're saying, can you restate your contention 1? They're giving them free airtime for the judge, right? So then you get to repeat your solid case, and you just sit there, oh, okay, cool. You have another question? Yeah, can you restate your contention 2, right? Okay, so they just get to repeat their case. So come prepared with questions that you may or may not use, but like think ahead of time, how will you handle this in the round, right? I think that you should probably also have an idea of what people might ask you, right? Again, if you're gonna attack your own case, do some of that practice stuff, you should know people are probably going to attack this, and I'm gonna be prepared with this, right? Okay. Maybe a couple more things here. I want to talk a little bit about like giving the kids autonomy. So again, like wanting to win, I feel like we all want to win. Like if we go to a tournament, like do I want my kid to beat another kid? Like yeah, I do, right? I think it's just like human nature, right? Do we want, the correct answer is like, well no, we want them to learn, but I can't help but want them to learn and win, right? And so sometimes we may feel like, you know what, I feel like I'm smarter than a high school kid. Like I feel like if I wrote a case, we could beat this other team, right? And so I mean, if you want to write your cases, sure. We don't do that, but allow your kids to make their cases. Allow the kids to use the contentions that may not be great, right? Because you're going to go use that contention and get smoked, and then the hope is that you're going to learn that, like, okay, I'm going to do better, or try harder, or be more creative. I think of one example, we had a PF topic that it was probably like universal health care or something like that, or something with medicine or something. And so I think as we were kind of walking through and talking through, the idea of evolution came up, kind of like, well, maybe we should just the neg is like, let evolution take its case, or, you know, whatever. And so we kind of joked around about that, but I think one team was like really into it, right? And so they kind of kept going and did some research, and they were going to use evolution as they're going to run an evolution case.
Survival of the fittest kind of thing.
Yeah, survival of the fittest, right? Yeah, like let them die, right? And so I know going into the tournament that if they get anyone who resembles like a normal person, they're going to be like, you're going to lose that round, right? But we let them do it, okay? And what do you think happened? They got their butts kicked, right? but when I remember leaving the third round, they were so sure that they won that round, and it was just pure glee from the bus to the hotel. They found out later that they lost, but like, you know, months later, they still had, like, anytime you talked about the evolution case, they had all smiles. They were still convinced we should have won, man. That was so great, right? And I feel like they lost, yes, but they're gonna remember that stuff rather than like, no, you're an idiot. No one's gonna fall for that, you know, that kind of. So, anyways, let them have some control over what you guys do, and that makes them feel like, you know, we care what they think. Okay, yeah, this kind of goes along with that, but I think there's, you know, winning's not great. I think losing is great. I think that most kids are going to figure it out, and if they don't, they'll get eaten up. That's evolution, baby. So I did talk about my kid, my little guy, freshman, but he didn't get good because we wrote cases for him. He got good because he got beat and he got beat and he got beat and he got tired of getting beat, right? And he watched some of the other freshmen starting to have some success, and so these kids will just figure it out. And so let them lose, let them fail, let them struggle, right? I think we all know that. And then if you have kids, we're supposed to let them do the same thing and not just take those opportunities away from them to learn and grow. All right. All right, so maybe just to kind of wrap up, and then we can do any question answer stuff if anybody's interested. But yeah, just to close, we probably didn't talk about debate as much as we wanted to talk about debate in this class. But again, I don't feel qualified to do it. So winning is great, winning rounds is great, and especially for the kids, right? We were talking to someone at lunch. Their kid, small school, small program, struggling kids, they won a second place trophy at a tournament, and like it was the talk of the school, right? And so winning can be great for these kids. Winning rounds is great for these kids. I think individual wins are great. I think team wins are maybe even better, where like they're all working together for a goal. The first year I coached, we took second place. I still remember that team. So they changed the classification that year and shifted, I think, some of the stronger private schools up to 3A. And so I show up and like, oh, cool. And they're kind of talking like, we might have a clear path to a championship. And so we showed up to the state tournament, and then we got beat by, are they a private school? Charter school. So we got beat by them, I think like 13 points or something like that. And I still remember them jumping up and down, screaming in our faces in the hall. But I never had a team work harder in all my time as after we took that second place. They worked hard from start to finish, and then like, you know, they celebrated that win, they earned that win. But I think each year it gets harder. It gets harder to, why winning is tough, I think it's harder to stay on top than it is to get on top, right? And so every year it gets harder for us to stay focused, and you know, we're the best, right? We went 3 years, and like that says that we're the best. And so if that's the goal to win state, then our like the work that we put in is going to go like that because we think we're the best. If our goal is to like work hard no matter the circumstances, then we're going to stay up. But dealing with teenage kids, high school kids, it's tough to like get that ingrained in their head. We have to come up with creative ways to kind of keep them motivated. I don't know if we need to go over that, but yeah, so I mean, you just got to be creative with them, and anyway. But yeah, at the end of the day, to see these kids grow, to go from these little squirts who are shy and nervous and can't talk in front of people, to becoming kids who you know, go on and have semi-successful lives, especially when these kids are, a lot of them, like I said, are set up to fail. They don't have two parents at home. They don't have, you know, resources to help them succeed. They're not going to ever experience any of this winning stuff or success stuff because they don't know how to throw a ball or kick a ball or something. So this is a place where, you know, we get a certain group of kids. It's awesome to watch them succeed, and I don't know. So anyway, I think I'll end there.
Thank you.
Anyone have any debate-specific questions that I or Vaughn can answer? Yes.
You go first, I got some.
Yeah, so one of the challenges I'm confronting as still a relatively new coach, I don't make my students do certain events, I let them choose what they want to do. Well, I guess that's the first question, whether that's a good idea. The second would be, though, one of the challenges I've confronted because of that is I struggle to get kids to do LD and PF. I don't know if they're more intimidating, the debate events. They gravitate towards oratory and impromptu, especially new debaters. And so every year I struggle, especially LD. I can't get kids to do LD. I got one, maybe two max a year that will do LD.
Yeah.
So what tips have you encountered to convince kids they can do these more, for some reason, intimidating events?
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if that's a universal thing, but I think that's kind of similar to us. Like everyone wants to do spar and impromptu. Why? Because you don't have to prepare anything, right?
It's easier to
And so I think in our experience, so we try to get a kid, we try to do like most tournaments are Friday and Saturday, right? So if we're gonna take you and get you a hotel room, you're gonna compete on Friday and Saturday. So you pick a debate event and a speech event, right?
Oh, you double enter.
Yeah. So get them to do one of each. And then really we just like, you know, I want the kids to explore when they're starting out, right? 9th grade, double enter, triple enter, you know, rack up those speech events. To answer the question on how to get kids to do LD or PF, I think for us, it's been like, you just gotta get one kid to do it, right? And so I have one kid who is like an LD kid, and they kind of own it, and then I think they kind of get other kids to do it, if that makes sense, right? It is really tough if I tell a kid, hey, I need you to do LD, like the results aren't that great.
Yeah.
But sometimes we do, like, you know, we got to figure out how we're going to get a full slate to state, and okay, how are we going to maximize points and stuff. And so I might break you out of your doing spar thing and put you with this kid so we can have a PF team. But really, I think, again, if the kids choose to do it, obviously they're going to be more successful. But I just kind of feel like if you can start with one kid, and one kid's like the good LD kid, then they will attract a couple more kids. Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna work. This was my solution that I haven't put in place yet. I'll let you know how it works. But my kids are really big into like lettering and awards. And so part of the lettering process, there are so many debate events and there are so many IE events. And to letter, they have to do the majority of each. So when they go to a tournament, and they may not, and so they're gonna double, triple enter, but they are going to have to branch out. And they're gonna have to try new events if they want to letter.
To graduate letter, you create a requirement that they've done both.
Not to graduate, so they can letter every year, but they kind of have to go above and beyond, right? It's showing excellence in the year and that they put forth the time and effort to learn new things, or whatever. So I know a lot of programs like you have to win so many times or get so many points. And we're such a new program, I want to reward the effort, maybe not the result. And so I said, you know, I want you to try these. I want you to try LD. I want you to try PF. I want you to try these different things. And if you absolutely hate it, you've tried it, you've checked it off the list, move on to something else. But so I'm going to try that this year and see if I can get some lunch from that.
So before we go here, just to comment, do you have a debate class? Do you guys have a
Yeah.
debate class? Okay, so when I started, it was like, we tried to say, okay, you're required to go to so many tournaments, right?
Right.
And then you have parents saying, well, like, my kid can't do it, or my kid plays football, or whatever. And so I think I had the genius idea last year. We started doing points, right? And so I just kind of made up my own point system. Like, you get so many points for each event you do. You get so many points for placing, like, 1 to 5, blah, 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 right? And so I just required you have to get a certain amount of those points each quarter for your grade. Does that make sense? As part of your grade. So first quarter, like, you have to get certain amount, like 50 points or something, right? And so let's say one kid is really, really good, like my kid who's taken impromptu 2 years in a row. she can go to 2 tournaments, smoke impromptu and spar, and probably be done with her points. But a young kid who's just starting out, who's gonna get beat in LD, and then beat in impromptu and beat in spar, like that kid might have to go to 3 or 4 tournaments to get those points. Does that make sense? And then one other thing that we did last year is with all the novices, we did a couple practice tournaments, like just with our team before the first tournament. And so I required them, in the first one you have to pick a debate and a speech event, and then 2 or 3 weeks later you have to pick a different speech and different debate, and then a different one for that first tournament. So at that point they've done 3 debate and 3 speech, and then that kind of helps us like figure out where we're going to put them to. But it also gives them experience where we do kind of force them to try different things.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say similarly, have like a nice little mix between what both of you said. For our school, we do a lot of kind of front loading, like, okay, cause it is a class, we're all doing PF right now, we're all doing LD right now. We're all doing informative speaking, we're all doing oratory, so then by the time, first tournaments roll around, they've got a pretty good handle on what it's involving. But then, because there are so many events, and I actually really like it when I see my students enjoy getting better at specific events, so I always caution myself pushing them to try lots of new things, but for lettering, they have to do at least 2 or 3 different events. I have to look over the course of a season, like competitively, like you have to compete it, but for students who, let's say, I'm really deep diving into PF, I crashed and burned with this first topic, but I really like this next topic, and then they're able to see themselves get better. But I fear like if I were to say, okay, you did PF for this tournament, now you have to do LD here, you have to do something else, or there's so much of a drive to, let's say, get 6 or 7 different events over the course of the season, then they're not gaining proficiency in any of them. And I want them to feel like I'm getting better at stuff. And so I do have some students that will focus on like 1 or 2 one year, like let's say sophomores, and they come back as juniors, like, okay, I kind of did my thing in PF last year, but I really kind of want to deep dive into LD, or maybe I'll try policy. Why not give that a go? So I think proficiency plays a lot. So if you're thinking about your like lettering requirement, the idea of like not just like trying out new events, but do you see improvements in those events over the course of the season? I think is something to think about as well, because the more events that they have to do, the less proficient they're going to get at any of them competitively. Or just a thought.
One other thing for me too is like just the state roster, right? Like, so everyone wants to do spar and impromptu, but I got like our impromptu kids I got 3 of them that I think have taken top 5 the last 2 years. So if you want to do impromptu, that's great, but you're probably not going to state. However, I got only 1 girl who's doing extemp for us, right? So if you want to make it to state, then it might be smart to try extemp. So depending on like the size of your team, and you might be able to kind of push kids in certain directions that
Now
way.
we can double enter state, so.
I know.
Like especially for small teams, I have a pretty small team for the size of my school, very small for the size of my school. And so being able to double enter, if I only take, my whole team might only consist of like 8 kids. If I were able to take all 8 and then they can all double enter, that doubles my chances for my team to be able to
Yeah, that does make it more competitive for some small schools this year around, or smaller teams, I should say.
And so start at the beginning of your season, just let them know, say, hey, we're not a big team, but we can field this many events at state, so let's learn them, let's do them, let's compete as much as we can.
Any other questions?